Waiting and regulating changed my life without spending hours and hours in therapy offices. So I did not know how powerful this tool was until I started using it with families everywhere. And I want to teach it to you today. So regulating is a big problem with kids that are neurodivergent. They have problems with emotional regulation. They have problems with regulating their thoughts, their actions, which turns into behaviors, what we call it with kids. But if you have any neurodiversity stuff going on in your brain, you probably have a hard time with emotional regulation as well. And if you've been parenting kids that are challenging for any number of years, you probably have problems with regulating. I talk to so many parents that have PTSD from the things that have happened with their kids, from the aggression to just the daily, sometimes multi times during the day, battles that they're facing, whether it's getting a child into the car or getting them, to do homework or chores, or maybe even just to sit down and have dinner. So this is a huge thing that is life-changing. In my book, Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids, I call this co-regulation, or Calm Plus 5. And I'm not going to explain all of the Calm Plus 5 to you because it takes a bit longer and I need to kind of know a little bit more about your situation in order to do it. But basically, it's about waiting for your child to get calm and doing 5 minutes of being calm. And I'm going to explain what that looks like, but more importantly, I want you to just start to think about the power that you have in waiting. If you're waiting for your child to do something, and I work with a lot of children that have what would be termed as control issues or oppositional defiance, or maybe in not that long ago it would have just been naughtiness, right? But you tell them to sit, they want to stand. You tell them to do this, they'll argue with you about whether the sky is actually blue or not. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? And you might feel like you're constantly in these power struggles. And then we have some terms now that we use, like task avoidance, or trying to be a parent with low demands, all of those things, right? And so really, a lot of it is that your child is kind of, whether they're meaning to or not, which most of the time I don't think that that's necessarily their intent, is to run the show. They are kind of running the show. They're definitely holding the family kind of hostage with their behaviors. It doesn't matter if they're 5 or if they're the oldest in the family or the youngest. Like, these kind of behaviors are so challenging that nothing else is happening. And I hear from parents all the time that are worried about their other kids. Like, not only are the other kids watching this, but they're not having, the parents feel like they're not having a normal life. So the power of waiting is so important, and it really has to do with getting calm. And I want to teach you to do this so that you don't just keep running to all these different therapies to try to help your child to regulate their behaviors, because this is something that you can do at home, and it's incredible. So I think that you need to understand that when you tell your child, I'm just waiting, I'm waiting for you, we're not going to do this until you're ready, it does two things, right? Like, you are the solid object. You are the most solid thing in that moment, and you don't have to be changing or wishy-washy or wondering, like, what do I do? What am I going to do, right? You know what you're going to do. You're going to be waiting for them. And it puts you in this solid place in your child's eyes. And there's a whole bunch of research about being that solid object and being direct, and how that really helps kids that have anxiety. And I have yet to meet any families that have kids that are coming to me for help because of the challenges in their behaviors, because of all of the things, that these kids do not also have anxiety and sometimes depression as well. So this is a big thing for you to be the parent and to be the solid object. It doesn't have to be mean, it doesn't have to be militant, and it doesn't have to be this hard drive authoritarian, but it is authoritative, and it is taking command And I think that if you look at that your child's brain is like hijacked and that most of the time they're not able to get past through the emotional part of their brain, through the reactionary part of their brain to their frontal cortex where they can reason and make decisions and be rational, which is where we're trying to approach kids from a lot of times, especially in therapy. They need someone to come in and say, like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to wait for you. The other thing that it does is your kids that are grabbing for control, this actually puts the control back in their hands. You're waiting for them. And the interesting thing to me is when we kind of toss the ball back to the kids, they don't want it. So they're going to keep trying to toss it back to you. Why, go away, or I don't want you here, or I don't want to do this, or, whatever it is, right? And they're kind of throwing the ball back to you to carry for them, even though they seem to be fighting for control. But by throwing the ball into their court and saying, when you're ready, come do this, then you're actually helping them to gain their autonomy. So a Calm Plus 5 is called a Calm Plus 5 because we help the child to get regulated and calm, and then they have to stay calm in the parameters that we set for 5 minutes. So a Calm Plus 5 can take 5 minutes, or it can take however long it's going to take for this child to get calm. So I want to go briefly through how we do that. So a lot of it is by staying close and by having the child, basically they're kind of contained. So usually that's in their room, but sometimes it's in another area and you're there and you may be kind of moving in tandem with them for a while. Like I've seen a lot of kids that will kind of be pacing. They're not doing anything. They're not hurting anybody or anything. They may be yelling. They may be stomping around. I'm okay with that to a point. You have to kind of watch some kids because the pacing is what happens right before they explode. But a lot of kids just use kind of the pacing, like they don't know what to do. They may be, tight and clenched. And you're just saying, I'm just waiting here. Totally fine. Take as long as you need. I'm going to be right here. But when you're ready, I want you to go sit on the couch or sit down. And then you're not trying to talk them into it. You're not trying to cajole them. You're not trying to distract them. You're not threatening or bribing. You're just waiting. And this is the hardest thing for us to do as parents, is to just wait. And I think that it probably comes from just thinking it's not going to work, or that it's never worked before. But I'm here to tell you that I've been doing this now for over 12 years, and I've just seen so much power in your presence and just waiting when you're non-threatening. And then while you're waiting, you're going to be thinking about being the calmest in the room that you can, but you're actually really active while you're waiting. So you're kind of watching, you're making sure that they're not escalating into dangerous behavior. If they're, going to start chucking stuff at your head, those kind of things. If you have a child that is prone to more aggressive behaviors, I really don't want to address that on this video. I want you to know that there's people out there that will help you, like myself. So please go to my website, parentingchallengingkids.com, go to the Get Started page and get a 30-minute consultation with me, and I can help you. But I'm talking about kids that they are kind of aggressive, but they're not going to start attacking you or breaking windows or things like that. I have both sides of the spectrum, but they're definitely escalated. They're agitated, and so understand that when they're in that state, if they're not able to follow a direction like please go sit down, then they're not thinking. So all of the talk, all of that is, it's not going to work unless you get really good at waving kind of a shiny object in front of them that's going to get them to turn from that to this, but their brain isn't going to get calmed down. You didn't capture that piece of it. And so this is why this is so important, to have more of the waiting stance, and it is an active waiting. So a lot of times with kids, I'm giving them space, to kind of figure this out, but I'm also staying close enough that is one, safe, but also that allows me to, if I need to get a hold of them or I need to redirect them to what I'm asking them to do. Because remember, they're not rational. So a lot of times things that kids do is just what comes to them in the moment, right? Like they see the plant and so they, throw it on the ground. The other thing I want to encourage you that while you're in that waiting is to not add more to it. We're asking them when they're ready to sit down in the place that you ask them to sit. They may sit somewhere else, and that's okay. When they sit, you might be able to take a step in and you can go sit into the spot that you wanted them to be. So maybe they went and sat in a chair, and that's them calming down, but that's not where we can do the calm plus 5. So then once they sit down, then you might be able to sit down and just remind them, like, I can't start the timer until you're over here and calm with me. Being with you as a solid object is really, really important. And you being able to regulate your emotions. So all the things that are happening, the things they're saying, all of that, you want to allow yourself, like, you're going to hear it, but you're not going to engage in the argument of it. You're not going to try to convince them, like, no, I really do love you, or don't say that. That hurts my feelings when you tell me that you don't want me here, or why don't you want me here? We're not doing any of that. You're just kind of allowing that. If you think of yourself as a solid object, that those things are like water that just splash on it and go somewhere else. Later, when you're alone, you're going to need to process all this stuff. This is why I think you need a parent coach, because you need to process the things that your kids say and do, and to know that you're okay, right? Because most parents don't believe that they're doing a good job. And so it's really challenging because no one's going to tell you that. Your kids aren't going to tell you that for a long time, that you're doing a good job. And some of your kids are going to be more rewarding than other kids. So it's just part of having challenging kids. You don't get a lot of positive feedback as a parent, and that's okay. You don't need it from your kids. You're going to find it for yourself. You're going to get it through coaching and get the affirmations that you need. So once your child is starting to slow down and then they are able to listen and they sit, and again, you're just going to say things like, I'm waiting. When you're ready, then I'll start the timer. Then you're not going to start the timer until they're sitting next to you, and all this has to be laid out. They have to know, right? Like, I'll start the timer when you're leaning against me and your body is calm, or I'll start the timer when your mouth is quiet. I'll start the timer when your legs aren't kicking. Just be very calm, quiet. You're going to say it low and quiet. Don't let your voice get higher. Don't let you get more authoritative in it. You're just going to get calmer, right? Because your brain is calming down too. And you're going to think thoughts about, a lot of times I am a person of faith. So a lot of times when I'm in these situations with parents, I'm just I'm thinking about my mind getting calm, and I'm just praying for the child, because they're obviously in turmoil. They're obviously, escalated and causing distress and in distress themselves. So we're just like a blanket. Like, I just want you to be like a warm blanket. When they come and sit next to you, then you can sit next to you and they lean against you, or allow you to put your arm around them, whatever the agreement was of starting the timer. Then you're going to start the timer, and you're going to just be like that for 5 minutes. I prefer to not have kids looking at the timer, but if that's what you need to do, it's okay. I like actual timer on your phone, over Alexis, or something where you're telling them to set a timer, because if the child starts to fidget, or they're changing positions, or they want to talk or ask questions, or how much longer, all of that, you're going to pause the timer. It's a lot harder to do when you're now telling somebody what to do. Plus, in a lot of families, people are like yelling at their Alexa and stuff, so it doesn't create the calm atmosphere. So have it in your hands, or have a little timer, that you use for this. And then you're just going to wait. If they get really escalated in the middle of it, and get kind of re-escalated, you're going to start the timer completely over once they get calm again. But for the most part, you can just pause it and wait. Don't have to say a lot of words. That's the other thing that I tell parents a lot, is don't say a lot of words. You're just going to be calm. What this does is so critical for your brain and theirs. So you're teaching yourself to regulate even in a stressful situation, but you're allowing your brain to be available for them. And it's so powerful. So, and it may not feel like it, like you're not going to see the lightning bolts between the two brains, but basically their mirror neurons are copying yours. So you want to be calm, you want to get through it. When there's like 30 seconds left, you're going to tell them, there's about 30 seconds left. So when the timer goes off, we're going to stand up. You did a really good job. We're going to stand up. You're going to give me a hug, and then we're going to go do whatever it is. I was talking to a parent today, and I did mention that some kids, when they get really calm, they don't get calm very often, then they kind of will lay there for a little bit and they can't. So you're not going to pull them up. We're even in the waiting, like it's so important because it's so critical that you're there. You're not allowing anything else to happen, but at the same time, you're not physically making them. You can't physically make somebody be calm. You can't physically make them be quiet, not in a nice way anyway, not in a way that's legal, right? And so you're allowing their brain to do this, and it's so empowering for them. So it's the same thing when you stand up, okay, as the timer goes off, it's like, okay, get up. You're not going to pull them up unless they are going to go to sleep or something. Then we're going to do that. But that's another video. But you're just going to, you can give them, you can say, you need just a minute, and you're just going to wait there again. Then they're going to stand up and you're going to have a hug, and then you're not going to discuss it. You're not going to try to go over what just happened. This is not the time. Like, I put you in a calm +5 because blah, 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 blah. Now you're going to escalate both of you again, and you're going to be trying to do the next thing escalated again. This is a reset. And so you can don't use it as a punishment, use it as a reset when they need to calm down, when you need a transition, when they're having a hard time because of something else that happened. It's very powerful. It's kind of like mindfulness. It's kind of like things you might learn in other therapy, but it's so different than that. And the moment when they release and kind of relax into you, that's why it's so important that you're close by so that you can feel it. And even from when I'm helping families do this from across the room, or if I'm helping them with the child, it's like when you feel their body kind of release. And for our kids that are neurodiverse, like they don't, even in their resting state, their heart is still really beating a lot faster than normal kids. So they're calm. Like it's not going to, most kids aren't going to just totally melt, but it's so different than how they normally are. And this is why they're so resistant to doing it. Also keep in mind that before you start that timer, it's going to take 20 to 30, sometimes even 40 minutes before you're going to even be able to start that timer, because they have to go through this process. If they're very little, you're going to want to have them even closer, like, be on the floor with them and be holding them, kind of, in front of you, because they are so much more fidgety. And you may still call it a calm +5, but you might set the timer for 3 minutes once they get calm, because you want them to be successful and you want them to know what that feels like. But for the most part, even if they're younger, after they've done it a couple of times, you for sure want to keep doing the 5 minutes. It all works when you put all the pieces together. And if you have any questions about it, you can leave comments below. You can get a hold of me on my website, parentingchallengingkids.com. But for right now, the best thing that you can do is share this video with other people that you know are struggling with their kids that get really escalated, or parents that get really escalated. This can be really helpful for them as well. Thank you.